All right, so welcome everyone. I'm excited to be here today with Kimberly Wilson. Kimberly is a psychotherapist, the designer of Tranquility Eco Fashion, the founder of Tranquil Space Yoga Studio, author of several books, and host of the podcast and blog Tranquility du Jour. She is a woman who truly lives life by her own design and has found a way of weaving consciousness and yoga philosophy and tranquility into her fun and stylish life. Welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. I think that women who are living life on their own terms and have, created a life that they love living is so inspiring to me. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to share you and everything that you have to offer with my community.
Thank you.
So my first question for you is all about tranquility. So this is a word and a theme that is weaved throughout your brand and your books and your podcast. Can you tell us a bit about what tranquility means to you and how you came to it as a key word that you wanted in your life?
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people think, oh, tranquility. It must be like, when you're on a yoga retreat or like, meditating in a cave, like this lovely experience. And whenever I came up with the word, I wanted a name for my yoga studios. This was 20 years ago. And I thought, well, what is the emotion I want to evoke when people come in to the space? And at that point, it was my living room. And so the idea, tranquil space, it just came to mind. I wanted people to walk in and have like a sacred setting where they could kind of drop in from the chaos of the city. Well, fast forward 20 years. And then from there, yes, I created a clothing line called Tranquility, which you pronounced it correctly, which is amazing because viewers, there's no Y at the end. And so people get really caught up on tranquillit or whatever. I was trying to be clever with a capital T. You got it. So
I think
congratulations.
it's great.
Thank you. But I've had to really work to define tranquility over the years because again, people often think of it, oh, well, that's just a lovely concept, but there's no way I could have it. And the idea is like, I do not have this perfectly tranquil life. Nobody does. However, it's what we're striving for is how I defined it is the quality. Okay, Webster's defines it as the quality of calm, right? So I shifted it to the quality of calm in a full and meaningful life. Right. So full meaning you have barking dogs, you got crying babies, you got deadlines, you've got like a garden to tend to. I mean, you've got all sorts of things going on in your life. And yet, can you find those moments of tranquility within it? So that's really my idea behind it, because you're right. It is woven into everything from the clothing line to my nonprofit was initially Tranquil Space Foundation. Now it's Pigs and Pugs Project. But all of my books, my boyfriend at one point, he was like, I don't really know the difference between 52 weeks of tranquility and year of tranquility. I'm like, they're two separate books, but you're right. That is confusing. And so, yeah, it's woven into everything. But again, with this idea of like, we can all have it, but sometimes it's just that moment when you're sitting outside waiting to pick up your kid from soccer practice and you have a moment to yourself.
I love that. And I love how you bring into the definition this idea that we're living a full and active life. Because I think for a lot of us, when we think about tranquility or we think about being stress-free, even it evokes this idea that we're just sitting in a room, that things are boring or they're bland, or we're not living in color, if you will, that there's not much excitement. And I know from myself and a lot of the women in my community, we take on more and more in our lives because we want that excitement. We want to fully participate. We want to experience everything that life has to offer. But then it leads us to this place of overwhelm and stress and anxiety and feeling like we're not good enough because it's hard to manage all of these things. And I think that your idea of tranquility really brings that together in a nice way of saying it's pockets. of this tranquil feeling that we're having throughout the day. And you can do all of the big things and have all of the relationships and the rules and things you want in your life, but what are you doing with those moments in your life? So that's one of my questions for you today is, how do you find those moments? Because you do so much. So what do those moments look like and what do you do in them?
Yeah, so my moments are, you know, particularly, I'm a big bath girl, right? I'm always sipping tea, as you saw. Like, if I don't have tea in my water bottle within reach, I get anxious. I'm like, I need all of my libations, so I'm all about like staying hydrated. I take ballet classes. Again, really big bath girl. Like, I like to start my days or end my days with baths, and in the winter sometimes I do both because my bones are cold. Also just stopping, like I have a pug snoring in my lap, so my apologies if people can hear that. But we have 3 rescue pugs and a rescue kitty, and we live in 600 square feet. Not sure how that translates for you guys in Canada, but it's tiny. Let me just tell you, it's tiny. So, it's like even here can be quite chaotic at times. And yet, how can you just have a pause, take a breather, read a book? I'll often have like my Kindle or a book with me in my purse. So anytime I do have a moment, then I can kind of pick that up. Maybe it's in between clients. Maybe it's like today we were at the vet having the dog on my lap, checked out by the oncologist to make sure he was doing good. And of course we're waiting, right, while he's there. And so, it's like pulling out my phone and doing a little bit of catch up, so it's like finding these little pockets. Even if your day is booked from as soon as you get up and your feet hit the floor to night. So for example, last night I got home, I was exhausted. I'd had ballet, I'd had therapy that day. I'd seen a bunch of therapy clients, and I was just spent by the time I got home. So I just ate dinner, and then I crawled into bed and I read for a while about a woman moving to Paris. Somehow that always makes me feel good. But it's just those little moments, even when you're like, I got nothing left. And that's how I felt last night. But I still had time to do just a little bit of self-care before I slept for 9 hours. Sleep is also very important, very important.
Absolutely. I often talk with my clients about the importance of sleep because I think in our fast-paced lives, it can fall into the category of a waste of time, which is so incredibly unfortunate because I think, even just beginning to understand as a culture the importance of sleep for our health and for our mindset. And I know for myself, I see the difference in my mood and in my level of optimism. When I have an ambitious day with lots of things going on, if I go into that sleep deprived, then the mental script that's running is completely different and much more negative than if I'm well rested and feel like I'm ready to take it on.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned that because making sure you're hydrated and that you're eating well and exercising. I mean, those are the 4, like, you gotta do it. Or we've got nothing left to give and we're not going to show up as good CEOs, good moms, good partners, good friends, good neighbors, anything, because we're going to be so cranky. And as you said, the script that's running, it's not going to be your best self. It's hard to be your best self when we don't have our basics taken care of. And to me, that's really the foundation of a tranquil lifestyle. It's like making sure you yourself are a priority.
I love that. It gives me the image in my mind of being in the eye of the storm. Like you are that calm and tranquil space that you manage for yourself amongst the storm of everything else that goes on around you.
Right, exactly.
Because at the end of the day, we have control over ourselves and how we treat our bodies and how we show up. And that's pretty much it.
Yes.
Yeah, making sure that we're doing our part, that we're showing up for ourselves.
So important.
I love that. So I'm curious because I hear from so many of my clients and people in my community that they get sucked into the scrolling on social media. And you've just painted a picture of such lovely days where you're reading or you're enjoying yourself in the bath. How do you personally resist the scroll?
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's so interesting that you bring that up because that is such a struggle. And, there'll be times, and I don't know if you've experienced this or anyone viewing, where you're so tired, but if you stop scrolling, you'll have to like use energy to actually get into bed and brush your teeth or whatever and go to sleep. So it's like easier just to scroll. And it's moments like that when I catch myself. So just, I'm guilty as charged. I also struggle with this. But what I try to do is when I'm doing it, to ask myself, okay, am I being mindful here? Or is this something I'm avoiding? Am I doing this to avoid? This past weekend, we were up in Cape May, New Jersey, which is this beautiful beach town that has these sweet Victorian homes, and the dogs could run on the beach. And so, during that time, I was uploading a bunch of photos to Instagram or videos to Instagram. And, and I realized like I was on Instagram a lot kind of during that experience. And I thought, it's just so interesting, right? How we're like, oh, that's a great shot. Let's snap that, rather than fully being in the moment. And so I've noticed since I've been back, and it's just been a few days, but I'm not as interested in Instagram. It's like, it's kind of in that moment when you're really excited and you want to post and share some things and check in with your community. But then when I'm living kind of like everyday life, sure, like photos of cups of tea or, my office space, like I love to share images like that. But, when I am doing that mindless bit, just scrolling, I just do what I can to catch myself and regroup. But I tell you, when it's the hardest for me, for some reason, is before bed, whenever I'm just too tired to do anything else, including get ready for bed. And that's when I'm like, okay, stop. I had at some point set up on my phone, you can do this. It's some app, but it'll shut off social media after, like, say, you get to choose, say, 15, 30 minutes a day. And that was really interesting. But then I found myself, because I have a few businesses, that I would be like, okay, well, my phone just shut down. Let me get on my desktop. And I'm like, okay. And it wasn't because I was mindlessly scrolling. It was because I really was wanting to post something. But I find that I've shifted and I'm no longer doing as much like Facebook, Pinterest, all of that. I really focus a lot on Instagram, Facebook for business, not personal, really. I rarely post personally anymore. And then I'm trying to do some videos here and there. So yeah, it's not so much trying to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. And I think for a lot of people, that is an issue, because it actually can make you feel worse about yourself, which what I always tell my clients and encourage myself is don't judge your insides by somebody else's outsides, right? Because we know what's going on in our head. And then we see this other person that has this beautiful, perfect life, right? And we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So just being able to keep that in mind. And if you do find that social media is actually making you feel kind of yucky about yourself, then that's really important too. Take a step back and avoid it for a while. Do like a social media cleanse. It can be quite helpful.
Lots of great tips there for us. I love the idea of presencing yourself to what it is that you're doing when you catch yourself scrolling. And it's definitely a practice, just like when we are in meditation or we're on our yoga mats. It's that noticing of ourselves wandering and then having to bring ourselves back. And as we flex those muscles, it gets easier and easier to notice, okay, I've wandered, I'm not being present here, and then call ourselves back to what it is that we're doing in the moment.
Right. Yes.
That's some great advice. And I think what we talked about so far leads so well into one of your books, which is Hip Tranquil Chick. I love the way that you describe and define what a hip tranquil chick is. So can you share that with us?
Absolutely. And yeah, I was just looking over here because I've got the cover. And so yeah, this book came out in 2006, which is wild. It's like, how has that much time passed? But I did do a really kind of careful defining of Hip Tranquil Chick, because the thing about it is I thought around this time in '06 in particular, there were a lot of books like the Hip Chick's Guide to Homemaking or the Hip Chick's Guide to Lifestyle, whatever. And so, that's whenever I was like, Hip Tranquil Chick. And so the idea with hip is being like kind of up with what's going on, kind of interested in life and new things and staying, really paying attention to culture, things along those lines, right? But I also said, it doesn't mean too that it's like superfluous or it's, irrelevant sort of stuff, like just Manny's Petties. It's like, okay, I'm really like up to date on what's going on. Tranquil, clearly that had to include that, but I really wanted Hip Yoga Chick. But I think at that point that was another brand that was maybe associated with like mat bags or something. And so my trademark attorney, who is a friend of mine, was like, what about Tranquil Chick? And I'm like, oh my gosh, genius. So really he deserves credit for this. And then chick, the idea too, I think a lot of people have a negative connotation to the word chick, which is fine. I get it. You could replace it with whatever you want. I kind of just went with it because Hip Chick was just so kind of catchy. But even whenever I wrote this, I described us like, I think my grandma at that time is about 95. I was like, I think she's a chick. Like, it's not about being like a young person. It's really about your energy. It's about the energy and zest that you bring to life. So that's kind of the idea behind it. And again, it's a guide to life on and off the yoga mat. So the idea with it is like, how do I lead a tranquil life? Not just when I'm rolling out my yoga mat, doing my sun salutations, and then, get in the car, drive home, and I'm like honking at everybody. Or, it's like, how do we weave this into all areas of our life, also off the mat? So that's where Hip Tranquil Chick came about.
I love that. I love that. And I feel like that is perfect for my audience because we talk so much. I have a course called Eats and Asana. So it's a yoga and nutrition course. And in that program, we talk so much about how do you make yoga your lifestyle. And I've had in mind, this idea of myself personally and the type of life that I want to lead. And when I found you and your work and your brand and this book in particular, I felt like, yeah, someone else gets it. And someone else shares this vision of, how to live in a mindful way, but still enjoy all of the fun and playful and awesome things that life has to offer.
Absolutely. And one thing too that might be kind of fun is just to read briefly to your listeners in case this is helpful, is the Hip Tranquil Chick Manifesto.
Let's do it.
So it's, as a Hip Tranquil Chick, I blank, and you write in your name, promise to create a vision for my life, nourish my inner artist through constant creativity, breathe through challenges, consciously carve my career path, host savvy soirees to expand my community, mindfully manage my money, design an oasis to nurture my soul at home and work, indulge in socially conscious actions, exude my signature style, challenge myself daily, seek opportunity and express gratitude, serve as an inspiration to others, nurture my relationships daily, surround myself with candles, flowers, and positive pals, nourish my body with oodles of water, fresh fruit, and whole grains, schedule herbal tea sipping, bath time soaking, and journal writing, find inspiration in the mundane, and practice yoga gracefully on and off the mats. And it's so funny when I read this because I'm like, oh my God, at that time, I loved the word oodles. I was all about the word oodles, and I was all about the word flair. And so it's so funny to see, to read this like that, a few years later and be like, that was where I was right then. Yeah.
That's so cool. I love that manifesto. And I think there's something in there for everybody. There's bits and pieces that we can see ourselves in. And there's probably a lot in there that's aspirational for us, for where we are at right now. And I want to say with that we need to give ourselves compassion for being where we are at right now, and having those dreams or those desires for where we want to move forward. And I think that we find those moments of tranquility when we're being compassionate with ourselves, and saying, I'm on the path. I'm doing the things today that are going to lead me to that lifestyle, or to be that type of person tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, this is by no means, because it was interesting too, as I was noting, like daily, I had daily listed for a few things. I mean, some of us can just get up and get showered daily, you know what I mean? So it's like recognizing at certain parts of your life, it's like, where does all this fit in? And it's really, I think, more aspirational, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. And it's lovely to have something like that outlined that we can aspire to and be inspired by. Mm-hmm. So one of your other books, which I love, is Tranquilly Style. I love the subtitle to it. It's Mastering the Art of Enlightened Work and Mindful Play. I'm wondering if you can give us some tips for living in this way from that book.
Absolutely. And you know what's so fun too about this book is I actually asked my blog readers at the time, so this came out in 2010, I was like, I need a subtitle, right? That is about kind of like work-life balance of sorts. There's 9 chapters and 3 of them are devoted to entrepreneurship. So, you know, work had to be kind of a part of this. And at that time, the Julia Child movie was out. I can't remember what it was called. Julie and Julia.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and it was Mastering the Art of French Cooking or something, right? Was the book. And so somebody suggested this, and my editor loved it. So Mastering the Art of Enlightened Work and Mindful Play. So the idea is like, how do we incorporate these ways of kind of being in the world in a way that allows us to be organic, playful, and yet engaged and aware, you know? And so what was kind of fun too, I was obsessed with cupcakes at the time. Mm-hmm. Still am, but, you know, particularly so at this moment. And so I had 3 different parts to it. So one was mixed mindfulness, because I had to ask people, I don't bake. And I was like, okay, what do you start with? And they were like, well, you start mixing. So mixed mindfulness and its ingredients for tranquility. And this is spirituality, aspirations, you know, getting clear on your goals. Like, what is it you want to see for yourself when you are scrolling mindlessly through Instagram, which we're all guilty of at times? What is it that you see that you're like, I'd like to have more of that in my life? And then divine do-gooding. So the idea of actually giving back. In what capacity are you showing up in your community or online and helping to make a difference for others? And you know, there's that great poem by Marianne Williamson about whenever you let your light shine, you unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. And so sometimes it's simply by living your life that you are actually doing divine do-gooding. So the second part was bake in beauty. And this was our external expression. So that's chic creativity and sustainable style. You see, I have a thing for alliterations. And creativity was like, you know, even from, you know, using fun, colorful markers, you know, as you're taking notes or things along those lines that, you know, it's like paper clips with, you know, ribbons and things like that, which is stuck in the book from a book event, you know. So it doesn't have to be anything where it's like, oh, you know, I'm not in the art world. Well, actually, everything you do can be art and creative. And then style, of course, is the way in which you show up in the world. And then the third part was decorate with sprinkles. So that's always my favorite part of the baking process. Like if I get access to a cake, then I'm always like all about the sprinkles. And so this is our entrepreneurial topping. And the thing about it is, you know, some people may feel like, oh, I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't have my own business. I work 9 to 5, or I'm a stay-at-home mom. And yet we're all in charge of our lives. So to me, we're all entrepreneurs. So I have Savvy Startup, Blissful Building, and Empowered Expansion. And this really talks about kind of my journey from starting a yoga studio in my living room to growing it into 2 studio locations programs that were quite large, and then selling those in 2007 to Yoga Works. And at that point, I hadn't sold them because this is 2010 and I sold them in 2017. But it was the building in and moving into a brand new space that was like 3 stories and had pigeons living in it initially. So as you can imagine, we had to do all sorts of work from electrical, et cetera, everything. And so it was fun to kind of talk about that process. Is like you start with a little seedling, right? Mm-hmm. This vision in my living room, and then growing, expanding it. And then how do you do that along the way? Mm-hmm. So that's Tranquilista.
I love that. I love that. And for anyone who's listening who maybe isn't an entrepreneur, I love what Kimberly just shared about how we're all entrepreneurs in our own lives. We are all the creators of that vision that we have for ourselves, and taking those step-by-steps every day to bring our vision into our reality. That's beautiful. So last question for you, Kimberly, and it is about your, we're talking on video today, so I'm seeing your beautiful background, and all of your photos online are so beautifully styled, and your fashion is so gorgeous. And I'm wondering, this environment that you create and the way that you present yourself, how does that play into your mindset?
Yeah, it's thank you, by the way, for the kind compliments. And for me, there's this kind of assessment called VIA strengths, and you take it and you find out, okay, like what are my top strengths? And for me, it's appreciation of beauty. Isn't that wild that that's like number one? And so to me, it's really important, even in this tiny space. And even my office at the studio was literally like the size of an electrical closet. It was really important to me to have like sweet stuff around that just inspired me. Mm-hmm. So whether or not it's the way I present myself, which I'm always in black, I just love black, and I'm always wearing my clothing line, which is Tranquility, as you beautifully pronounced, and it's locally sewn with eco-friendly fabrics. And so it's great because it's super comfy and it dresses up and down. And so I will wear it to ballet class or yoga class, and then go see clients in it, or then go out on a date with my partner. So the idea too with style is, okay, it's how do we show up, present ourselves to the world. And I always notice that when I feel kind of more pulled together, or when I am more pulled together, I feel better. I just feel like a better representation of myself. And for, somebody who's watching that may be no makeup. It may be, it's not about so much the external. It's more about how you feel with how you're presenting yourself. Mm-hmm. And then with, surroundings or environment, like what you're seeing. Again, beautiful things. And I don't mean expensive things by any means. I'm all about twinkle lights and, candles, and like I'll show you here, I'm obsessed with washi tape. I don't know if you know what washi tape is.
Yeah, I do. I love it.
But that's a beautiful way to seal a thank you note. Or I have some sweet things that people have written to me, put on a wall right here, and they're put up with washi tape. So mm-hmm. It's like you could use Scotch tape, or you could use pink sparkly tape, mm-hmm. So it's just little things like that of how can I incorporate more beauty. Even my office space where people come and see me for therapy, people walk in and they're immediately like, because I have aromatherapy, I've got plants, I have crystals, I've just got like a really sweet setting that I think connotes almost like a spa-like experience, or a space of healing and being able to drop in and safety. Mm-hmm. So to me, these things are really important. And I think it just comes down to figuring out like what is your signature style, knowing that it evolves too, and allowing it to evolve. Like I never grew out of pink, as you see with that wall, and I don't know that I ever will. But some women in their 40s are done with pink. So it's just embracing what is signaturely you.
Yeah, that's so lovely. I love that idea of expressing your personality in your surroundings. that has been something I've moved a lot throughout my life so far, and that has been something that I've taken into each space, is that if my space reflects me and reflects who I am and the colors that I like to see and that make me feel good inside, it does affect my mindset. It affects the way that I show up, and just like you described your office being that place where people can come and just exhale and feel safe. I think that's something that is fairly easy for all of us to accomplish. Even, maybe it's not a whole room of the house, but maybe it's a corner of a room of a house where you have a couple of things and maybe a candle or some flowers that you have around you that make you feel safe or inspired or creative, or however it is that you are looking to feel. So thank you for that. I think that's a great tip and a good takeaway for us all to start to bring that little bit of tranquility into our own lives.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So Kimberly, where can we find more of you?
Yeah, so I'm over at kimberlywilson.com, and I love hearing from people. I also, as you mentioned, have a podcast, Tranquilly du Jour. And June 9th here in DC, I'm hosting a really fun event, TDJ Soiree. So you're welcome to check all this out. Again, it's at kimberlywilson.com. And thank you so much. It's been a treat to be with you today.
Awesome. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. Thanks for taking time out of your day to share more about you and your lifestyle with us.
Thank you.